Our forefathers fought for liberty, individual freedom, self-expression, and the right to self-determination. They created a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, establishing a nation of free individuals who ignited a bright beacon of hope. America's a land where any person, from any background, can succeed, so long as they endeavor forthright with determination in their heart. A melting pot, the greatest hits album of the human race. We gather here today to renew that sacred bond, that oath to freedom. Welcome to the marketplace of ideas.
At least 4, probably.
Indeed. My name is Kyle Smith. I will also be hosting you through this event tonight. Thank you so much for joining the Marketplace of Ideas. If you are watching through Nonfon stream, and chances are that you are indeed doing so, please consider dropping into our Discord and checking us out. We are a brand new show. As you can see, very professional. Still working out the kinks, but dedicated to a goal of cultivating good faith and good fun conversation about the current events. If we might, Nonfon, could we hand you a Discord link to drop into the chat?
Of course, yeah.
Wonderful.
Paste.
No, we've handed out more than that.
Is there a limit? Can I just like totally inflate the currency? Can I make it worthless?
Well, we did give 10K to Dylan Burns, so sure, fair enough. Indeed. So it's entirely possible that if you've got enough clout behind your name, we'll throw all sorts of fake money at you in order to buy your loyalty. Speaking of buying your loyalty, though, just a quick trip over to our YouTube channel and giving this video a like and maybe a subscribe if you're feeling like it to our channel would help us out greatly. If you could do those things before heading back to Nonfon stream, we would greatly appreciate it. And we greatly appreciate Nonfon for joining us at the last minute. We had Ryan Mullally scheduled. We're going to reschedule with him. Indeed. Okay, very good. But for now, I'm looking forward to talking with Nonfon. Nonfon, I don't want to precede your politics too much, but I understand that you are of the liberal persuasion. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think I'm broadly center-left liberal, fall within sort of the broad scope of neoliberalism, not quite the narrow scope of like the full-on Reagan type neoliberalism stuff that we used to have. But broadly, yeah, I'm reclaiming it. Of course, yeah. I mean, yeah, essentially, I'm more kind of free market oriented than I think a lot of people maybe in a similar place to me, even on the Democratic Party, kind of are. So, I think generally things like free trade are very good. Not necessarily low taxation, but efficient taxes, not doing things like wealth taxes or unrealized gains taxes, having a tax code that's simple and efficient as opposed to one that really just strives for maximum progressivity, and really like having a sort of general presumption, I guess, in favor of markets kind of working. Absent good evidence of a market failure, my presumption is kind of going to be that it's going to lead to a pretty efficient outcome, and then some skepticism about how well, even in cases where there is some identifiable market failure, how well the government can intervene to actually make things better. That's usually what I mean by neoliberal.
I've gotten some reports, James, that unfortunately your voice is not audible on the stream. We should probably solve that before we halt too much momentum as we go into the conversation. We've got that going for us. Oh, yeah, we can hear you just great.
Yeah.
Change my default audio device. There we go. People can hear my lovely voice on our stream now. Okay. Okay, so now we've dealt with that. When did you first become politically activated? What got you interested in the modern political landscape, affecting it, talking about it, thinking about it?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to know what actually made me interested because I got at least somewhat interested in politics relatively young. When I was in like 8th grade, when I was like 14 years old, I remember like watching like the Democratic candidates' primary debates. I was like I was basically like a Bernie bro back then, and I don't even know exactly what set that off. What made me do some of those initial things, but that's the first memory of like engaging in politics I have is kind of watching the Democratic primary debates in the like 2020 cycle, and then sort of I continued to read more stuff that was not about necessarily like modern day politics. I didn't follow the news super closely, but I would read like a lot more lefty books, like Noam Chomsky stuff, and I read even like some straight up just like Marx and Lenin back then, and then people who broadly like leftist popular books throughout my high school years. And in a sense, that was me being interested in politics. But during that period, like I very rarely actually like kept up with the news back then. Like I don't think I could tell you. I could tell you, how many members of Congress there were, but I don't think I could tell you like who most of the important Congress people back then were. I just had sort of much broader interest in the optimal way to organize society and stuff like that. But throughout my high school years, I started it was through just continuing to read more. It was through I think seeing the left, like the pretty far left people, I think make some kind of crazy statements about like the Ukraine war when that happened, the Iranian protests, which happened a little bit after that, I think as well. That kind of made me start questioning things a little, as well as just conversations I had with other people, including like I remember like my high school economics teacher, and also just learning economics, as much as that is a meme. It sort of made me start moving more. I say to the right, but obviously, it was from
from the far
like
left,
socialist,
to the pretty far left,
right?
Yeah.
It was from a socialist to like, like maybe I'm like kind of a market socialist type person to like eventually like, oh, maybe I'm, just more of a more of a capitalist and broadly neoliberal. And I think, in the economics, learning about that is sort of solidified a lot of the neoliberal economic views that I hold, obviously. And I think I started streaming about politics a little bit after I graduated high school in 2023, and I had been streaming like gaming content for forever, since I was like 6 years old on my PS4, just using the native built like live streaming thing. But I started consistently streaming, and relatively consistently, and streaming about politics in like 2023, and it just kind of eventually you get invited on panels, and I started following the news more closely and having opinions on more narrow things, I guess. So, that's kind of how I've ended up here.
So
go for it.
You've been developing your streaming chops since you were 6 years old. How do you say how old you are, or can you give us a ballpark?
Yeah, I'm 20 years old.
Okay. So you've got 14 years experience streaming already.
Kind of, technically. I mean, 6 is probably an overestimate of how young I was.
Sure, but either way, single digits, yeah?
Yeah, it was single digits for sure, I think, yeah. But yeah, like I remember, like my oldest video is like me playing Happy Wheels and just like trying to rip off like fucking PewDiePie back then. Of course, yes. Yeah, because that's who I was watching when I was that young.
Hey, he started off trying to do Call of Duty videos like any 14-year-old would,
Of course, yeah, and I wasn't at all consistent about it. It was like I had like 5 different.
To Empire was Happy
Apparently,
Wheels
yeah,
streaming.
I know it was. I could have been way bigger if I continued the Happy Wheels stream, but unfortunately got bogged down in this.
Got pulled into the weeds of politics, and now you're stuck in the doldrums with the rest of us.
Good on you for sticking to what I call vegetable politics, like that you could come on here and just be ridiculous, lie like both sides often do to get clicks, and be salacious, and that's something we plan to do here on this stream. But
most definitely, we really
big props to you for being honorable and good faith and really working on doing the groundwork of learning and economics and political theory.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Now I need you to fix everything. Because I am so tired of everything and just waking up every day and wondering like which member of our international government is a pedophile today, and how are they going to sue me for $10 billion?
Or better yet, how are they going to take all that tariff money that they've been collecting and rather than refund it to the people who paid the money, give it to Howard Lutnick's son's company instead?
Well, yeah. I mean, the unfortunate thing with that is obviously like, for the tariff refunds legally, it's always the statutory incidents, like just whose money or whose bank account the money came out of that gets refunded, and not necessarily
so you don't think that's much
final
of an open
incidents.
Question. You think it's pretty cut and dry that the companies that these came out of are going to just receive it in time?
I don't know if anyone receives a refund. It'll be the people who is the statutory incidents is on, as opposed to like the economic incidents. It'd just be way too complicated, way too crazy, way too impractical to like give a tariff refund to consumers, I think. And my understanding is that the president has always been based on, again, whose money or whose bank account the money came out of, and not, whether or not that cost was eventually pushed on to consumers.
Right, who can actually provide a paper trail to look at and examine, as opposed to extrapolating on data Pritzker did. Which, I think that Pritzker's statement and as a gesture can be appreciated for what it is, but I don't expect that to come to fruition anytime soon. Do you?
What do I not expect to?
So JB Pritzker wrote an open letter to the government.
The invoice for the
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. And he like divided an amount of money by the number of families in Illinois, and said therefore every family in Illinois is due, like, I think what he came up with, like $1,500 or $1,700.
Yeah, it was I think 1,700. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think anything like that is going to happen. I think more likely than not, companies will be able to get a refund. There's a chance the court will say the government doesn't have to do that. But from my understanding, in most cases in history, the ruling has been that the government has to issue a refund for taxes later deemed to not be legal. So
yeah, so there's a good chance
more likely than not.
So there's a good chance that FedEx, who sued today for the very reason we're discussing, will eventually see some sort of compensation, but probably shouldn't hold out hope for those $1,700 checks that we've been promised.
Well, then you've got the chance for, I think, companies like Costco who are smart are going to find a way, if once they get their due, kind of slide it on to the customers and say, look, we did the right thing. And they could win a little bit of good favor with their customers.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, one reason you didn't see prices go as high people predicted, and just the pass-through of whatever, price effect there was in firms go all the way through to consumers, at least not in every industry, was because a lot of these companies did expect the tariffs to be temporary, and it seems like they were, right about that. Obviously, we'll see how far the new tariffs get, but
my understanding is the new tariffs last. They start tomorrow and they last for 150 days. At which point Congress would have to codify them to continue them. Of course.
Yeah.
That's assuming things work as expected, which who knows?
Yeah. There's a lot of different. Well, I think he's done like 3 different. There's like 3 different sections of the whatever trade act that he's invoked. I don't believe the 122 tariffs have to be approved by Congress at the end of the time period, or I might be thinking of a different section of the act. But those are probably unconstitutional for different reasons. Yeah, but there is a reputational cost to raising prices. And that's why firms have things like loss leaders. That's why even when egg prices were skyrocketing, a lot of times grocery stores were selling eggs at a loss still, because those were that's what gets people in the store. Then you make up your money and other things. So it's possible that companies try to pass on some money as savings to consumers if they get the tariff refunds. But I would expect the companies most willing to do that, it just kind of didn't pass through the cost in the first place, because they were betting on it being temporary and didn't want to raise prices because of the reputational cost of doing so.
Yeah, and they were very on again, off again. So a lot of companies were able to stock up during the periods where they could make the purchases at without tariffs, and then as we talkoed back and forth, they would start running out and not have to buy quite as much through the tariffs, and then they could weather that a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and the effective tariff rate was always much lower than the announced rate, because there were so many exemptions granted to either specific companies or specific goods. Like there's a big exemption still for goods that are USMCA certified from Mexico and Canada, and that's like 60% of our trade with Mexico and Canada is like USMCA certified goods. So a lot of reasons. I think the effective average tariff rate right now is I think it's below 10% right now. Because some of the new tariffs I don't think are in effect yet. There are different estimates. It's hard to even know. But something like that.
Now, you said that the new tariffs are probably unconstitutional for reasons. Do you have the ability to go into that anymore at this time? Have you looked into it?
Yeah. So the main thing that he invoked, the Section 122, to do another 10% universal tariff. I think he's raised it to 15% by now, supposedly, at least. Those come from an act back when we were on a fixed exchange rate regime. So just to clarify, countries have different currencies. Whatever those currencies, how much of whatever one currency can buy another currency, that's the exchange rate. When you hear the US dollar is being devalued overseas or whatever, what that means is our exchange rate is falling. Other currencies can buy more of our currency with less of theirs. And essentially, back then we would central banks and the Treasury would ensure that exchange rate stayed within a certain range. And when essentially when we had to draw down on our own reserves. We had to use our own money essentially to buy other currencies to keep it within that certain range. We refer to that as like a balance of payment deficit. And the language used in that bill is, you can invoke these if to prevent like a balance of payment deficit. Essentially, the point of the tariffs in that case would be people to buy less goods from overseas to try to make sure exchange rates stay within that certain range. Because when you buy an overseas good, that dollar goes into the pool of foreign exchange money available, and that'll affect the value of the dollar. Part of the reason the dollar is going down now is because a lot of people are selling U.S. assets, and when they do that, the available dollars in the foreign exchange pool goes up, and that devalues the dollar relative to other currencies. So, but now we have a floating exchange rate regime, so we don't have a balance of payment deficit in the same sense. Technically, in the strict accounting sense, the balance of payments is always equal to zero. Any transaction that happens is recorded in one account as a positive and then another account as a equally offsetting negative, right? So, typically if I buy a good from overseas, that might be a negative in our current account. That's what includes stuff regarding goods and trade, but it's going to be positive in the capital account because now someone has US dollars, and eventually those US dollars will probably be used to buy a US bond or some other US investment thing, and that'll be counted as a positive in the capital account. Technically, just them owning the dollars will also be counted as a positive in the capital account, but in the real world, most of the time they use they don't just hold on to US dollars for no reason unless they are criminals. They go buy US assets, US investments with it. So, but when we were on the fixed exchange rate regimes, we used to refer to a balance of payments deficit as meaning the drawdown in our own reserves when we had to essentially use our reserves of our currency and other countries' currencies that we have to maintain the price of the dollar in overseas markets. But we don't do that anymore. So that's just not relevant at all to what happens now. And Trump's own lawyers in the tariff case that the Supreme Court just ruled on even said the concept of a balance of payments deficit is distinct from the trade deficit we have, and that's why we're using IEEPA and not Section 122 to invoke these tariffs. So those are almost certainly illegal as well. But we'll see how long it takes to overturn these ones.
Right. I mean, it might take all the way up until the expiration date in, what would that be, July, August, when we'll be gearing up for some midterms where a lot of Republicans are expecting to get their lunch eaten by the Democrats. I'm understanding that a lot of the Republicans are privately very nervous / frustrated by this whole tariff thing. I saw Representative Bacon disparaging this tariff move and saying that it's going to screw over the Republicans. I'm really curious to see how the Republicans are going to try to pivot around this, and try and balance appeasing Trump's tariff policy and trying not to make that seem like an awful thing, while also trying to stick to messaging that's actually going to be effective to get them as many electoral wins as possible. What do you think they're going to go? Which way do you think they're going to go?
It's really hard to know. My sort of presumption is always that they're going to try to do essentially as little as possible, and usually that ends up being in Trump's favor because a lot of the previous tariffs didn't expire. The only action they took was to make sure the emergency tariffs on Canada didn't go into effect. To my knowledge, it's the only thing that they've done. So I would imagine if they can let them expire and not create there's not a ton of media surrounding it or whatever, they're going to try to do that. I doubt Congress will take any meaningful action to get rid of them. At least not if obviously if Democrats win more seats in the midterms, the House could do something, but usually it has to be approved by the Senate as well. And I don't know. I think a lot of senators would be unwilling to do anything as well. So,
yeah, I saw that Mike Johnson said that it's unlikely that they'll reach a consensus. I'm kind of curious to see if there will be some sort of well-timed distraction in order to keep the news attention elsewhere during that time. Oh, hey, Azihaya, thanks for jumping into the chat there. So it seems like it might be more incumbent on the Democratic messaging in order to navigate that situation properly to make sure people understand the tariff situation. And I think that takes us to our next big topic of the day.
Well, we can
which
segue through it and ask, how would you drive this tariff situation home to the American people if you were in charge of the Democratic messaging system?
Oh man, I don't know for certain what's the best messaging, but the two things that I think are going to be most salient to voters are just price increases that they're going to see and the corruption involved. So, obviously, I mean, Kamala Harris on a campaign trail even talked about obviously tariffs are going to be, she used the word inflationary. A lot of people have issues with that because inflation has a kind of more technical definition that would not necessarily mean tariffs are inflationary. But talking about just how much it's going to raise prices for people, especially grocery bills or whatever that people seem to care about the most, and then talking about the corruption involved as well. I don't know how salient some of those things are to people, but I think there's you can play into sort of the general populist anti-establishment sort of ideas people have, the populist has, right, the voters feel, by talking about, Trump is selling his meme coin, and he meets with these people, and then they get an exemption to the tariffs all of a sudden. It's like NVIDIA brings him some golden plaque, and they get their ability to export their chips to China. Isn't that a little weird? This is the most corrupt, evil administration. Everyone in his cabinet is billionaires. I think that messaging will work well as well.
It feels like you could create sort of a Rocky montage of corrupt moments in the Republican, specifically just with Trump, and then paint everyone in the Republican Party with that brush. Like it boggles the mind just how many scandals there are per day. There's just millions of, billions, tens of billions of dollars in monies that are getting transferred to Trump, and seemingly no interest in looking for accountability in that. And like we're still, it's Donald Trump who is what, like the first president in 80 plus years or something like that to not release his taxes. We still don't have them since before he ran the first time, while he was president the first time, between when he was president the first and second time, and through this. And it's just like the financial crimes must be stacking up so high that it like it's a.
I mean, even before he was president, he had the whole like Trump University scandal.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's not even, that wasn't like pales in comparison now to some of the other stuff he's done. So no one even knows anything about it. I mean, I don't even know a ton of the details about it, but no one cares.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How is that the case? How is it that we're imagining that all of these things that have been going on for years, and the Bitcoin thing, which has been going on since the day he was elected, I think the day before he was elected or something, or inaugurated or something like that.
I believe it was, the day before the inauguration.
Yeah, and so this has been going on the whole time, and then you've got the jet, the $400 million jet that we've all been talking about. We've got the Bitcoin. We've got just so many, the peace, what's it called? His peace council that he's got.
Board of Peace.
10 billion. The Board of Peace. How it seems like if you were there, if you weren't swayed for voting for Republicans for one of these things, I guess hopefully I think there will be a cumulative effect where every 2 weeks I've got like a coworker that comes in and out, and every 2 weeks it's like, hey, what'd you think about the $400 million plane? Hey, what do you think about the fact that they're covering up the Epstein files again? Hey, what do you think about the fact that, this, that, and the other? And there's always a reason, but I'm hoping, and I think I can sense and feel that he is being worn down. Like, you can only make excuses for Jeffrey Epstein's best friend making $10 billion on the Board of Peace for so long before hopefully they break.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it was part of their strategy, like intentionally to just like create. I think was it Steve Bannon called it muscle velocity or whatever. Just create so much news that people like couldn't keep up with it or anything.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think
there's an upper
part of me
limit to
just
that
thinks
eventually, right? Like,
yeah, I do. I think there's an upper limit to that, and part of me just thinks also that like voters will almost always just be angry at whoever is in power, especially with social media now. It seems like incumbents, like I don't even know if incumbent or for the president, I don't know if incumbent advantage is even a thing anymore. I think people are just going to be very upset about how things are going. Essentially, no matter who is in charge, and punish them because of it. But yeah, obviously, Americans can only tolerate so many headlines that are some wacky shit that they just didn't really see under Biden for whatever they think Biden's flaws are. You just like did not see nearly this much crazy wacky shit under him that was just like totally unprecedented.
And they act like
and
he's
hopefully
exactly guilty of everything that Trump is. Like, there's not only is there the accusations of the financial crimes, but even like the insinuations that he's appropriate with children. Like, how do they get it
but all of that
so
even like
reverse?
there were a lot of Republicans who cared about Hunter Biden, obviously, and like there were obviously on social media it became a big thing too. But I don't think how many like headlines were they about headlines were there about the Hunter Biden scandal? Like it was a big story for Biden, obviously, but I'm not sure it was this many. I don't know if and it was the same story every time. Like people probably get tired of it eventually. This you don't hear about the same.
I guess we've moved on to more modern problems, but yeah, we had the summer of racism for the election. So they've
Sure.
they've pivoted to just immigration and basic economics away from Democrats are so corrupt. But if there was any new information, I'm sure they'd just lick it right up. Just every morsel of any drama they can paint the left with.
Well, yeah, it's not like the investigations that Congress did into Hunter Biden didn't exactly find very much. So,
Yep.
You're not going to hear. I could be wrong. I don't know how you would test this, but I would imagine, there were not as many headlines about some new wacky shit that we found about Hunter Biden as there are about just like new crazy things that Trump is doing with Qatari jets or whatever deals Jared Kushner gets, whatever weird commitments Trump gets to his for his ballroom or for his presidential library. Hunter Biden, I think voters probably also got tired of way faster, but I could be wrong about that. There are obviously a lot of people who cared about Hunter Biden quite a bit. So
maybe that's just more the wing nuts, the people that are a little bit more engaged, the very online, the more informed parentheses uninformed.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be, there's going to be like sample bias with regards to like who I interact with, because they're going to be mostly like online people who are going to like care about these things a lot. And then I don't know how much to adjust for like, okay, if I see this many people on Twitter and all they tweet about is Hunter Biden, but I know people in the real world aren't like that. Like I don't know how much to adjust the percentage of people I think care about Hunter Biden based on that. But my intuition would be most people probably did not care that much about it by the time of the election.
Yeah.
Unless they're big Rob Noor fans or something. But
alrighty, well let's look at the agenda here. What else do we have to talk about? Alrighty, how about this? When you look at today's political landscape and the way it's represented in media, kind of bounces off what we were just talking about. In the way that the political landscape is represented in media, online, even in legacy media, and in our politicians and government, you'd think that we are more divided than in any other time since perhaps civil rights era, or some have even spoken about it. Like if you're a Tim Pool wingnut, even as divided as we were going up to the Civil War. But when you talk to normal Americans, I just don't think that's the case. It seems like there's a lot more common ground about, major issues of major issues of like freedom of speech, economic issues. There's certainly a difference in ground on uh like immigration issues, but I think there's just such a tough time for both sides seeing each other, and I wanted to hear what you think is causing that. Is it the media environment? Is it the fact that to create national coalitions, people have to appeal to that lowest common denominator, and that's why we're getting these populist politics? What do you think?
Yeah, I think these both play well with each other. So I think it's the media environment combined with a lot of times what people are fighting about now is just like basic descriptions of the world rather than like actual, policy or whatever. Because now people debate whether or not the 2020 election was stolen. Now people debate how many illegal immigrants there are, whether or not there's like 5 or 50 million in the country, as opposed to like just talking about, what the optimal immigration policy is. People very, very rarely have those discussions now. And that's all enhanced and to some extent maybe caused by, I think, social media, the fact that anyone can be a podcaster, anyone can be someone big on the internet
terrible.
where,
No one
yeah,
should
and
be a
kind of legacy.
podcaster.
That's true. In legacy media, there were, you had to have some standards in order to, actually be a journalist that people,
Now just
that people could listen
a-hole
to.
with a hat and sunglasses can just boot up his stream and fail to get his audio going and tell the world what to think. Which is why we ended up with Tim Pool and Candace Owens and gosh, there's plenty you could point to on the left too. I'm just not as good at doing that because I'm a hypocrite.
I think the left is, there's a lot of populist personalities on the left that are pretty big that I don't like. I think they're better about like not just like outright lying. I don't like. I remember if you look at like the top like 50 or something growing like Substack people or whatever, it's like I think most of them were, might be the top 50 YouTubers. Most of them were like almost all of them were right wing except for like More Perfect Union, who is like a left-wing like populist organization, and they sometimes outright lie, but they have very incredibly low standards. Like for example, like the video they made about, they do this thing a lot where they like interview people about certain things and they insinuate certain facts, but they don't technically ever state these facts. So they always have the defense of, well, we're just asking people how they feel. They did this with like AI data centers and water use, where like they went to a town and like interviewed people about the sediment that was in their water and stuff and how they had to ration water. And never did they mention this was all issues from the construction of the data center. The data center has not even been turned on yet, but they nevertheless insinuate certain things about what is the data center causing like the water shortage, even though to my knowledge that has not happened anywhere. The only issues have been with construction, which in principle, the same construction of any building can have the same effect on water if it's not properly dealt with. And they kind of did it with like some of their videos on like egg prices and stuff, where like they do very little actual analysis, but they just go and ask people about if they think corporate greed is responsible, but they never make like that affirmative claims about it.
Yeah,
but they don't like.
They're doing whatever they can to get views, it would seem, right? With their with their tactics. And that's I mean, one of the things that causes a lot of friction on the left is how to what degree does the more measured, quote unquote, center left lib side of things try to reach out and communicate with the more populist side of the left wing. You see this in discussions like Pisco and Hutch. I don't know how much you pay attention to their back and forth, but lately they've had quite a few on this topic in an increasingly heated manner. Also, more recently, and more notably, perhaps, there was Adam Mockler streamed with Hassan and had a relatively contentious conversation. Have you checked out either of those particular scenes? I don't know how much time you spend analyzing other people's debates.
Yeah, I don't keep up with every single Pisco Hutch debate because there are so many of them. Okay,
There's a few.
no
I've
offense.
done it a couple times. Keep
No
beating
offense
that
to the
dead
Live and Learn
horse.
people. Okay, I love all of
Sure.
them, and I've talked to all of them. I've been on Live and Learn. So, but I stopped watching Live and Learn after Econoboy left. Okay, but I've watched some of them. I was there for one of them, and then I watched like the most recent conversation Pisco had with both Destiny and Hutch. And then I watched most of the Adam Mockler Hassan thing, but I did not find it particularly interesting. That's like I find that area of politics to be not particularly interesting to me. I think it's important, and I'm glad people talk about it. That's not my calling, but I think definitely there needs to be some test that like you're actually a liberal if you want to have significant influence on elected politics. Now I think unfortunately the voters are just in a relatively populist like mindset. That rhetoric is very appealing to them, so I don't have huge issues with like working with more progressive people, right, that use those populist messaging. I think that's probably pretty decent electorally, and then it's just a matter of how much exactly do I want to compromise on policy in order to have a better chance of winning, and it's how much can liberals like center left people play into populist messaging without the need to like make the same type of policy concessions to the progressive people or whatever. I don't have very strong feelings on where those lines are or whatever, but generally I want the coalition to be.
Are you focused on when you ask yourself that question? What do the lines look like, even if you haven't drawn them distinctly? Like, what kind of issues?
Yeah, I mean,
is it about supporting
technically
candidates, or is it about being for liberalism generally, pro markets even, or mainly just pro democracy, or what? Where
I mean, yeah, to some extent, like technically, there are a number of things that I could find sufficient on their own if they went far enough. Like if someone just had like a truly terrible, I don't know, healthcare policy, then maybe it wouldn't matter if they're like a liberal. But like if a communist dude was like some incrementalist that like just had decently progressive policy that wasn't that bad, then I might be fine working, or at least making some concessions with them. If I thought they were going to be electorally beneficial, it's all going to come down to. Yeah, exactly. It's all going to come down at the end of the day to like just the expected value of like how much better will the world be if Democrats win versus how much worse will it be if we make these concessions to the left or whatever with regards to policy, and how much do we need them essentially. So there's not going to be any strict lines, but it's all going to come down to that calculation of weighing those three factors.
Have you paid much attention to the Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett race in Texas?
No.
It's that's an interesting dichotomy. Tallarico, if you're not familiar, is presenting a populist view that is informed by Christianity. Yeah, that's.
I've
like
seen him on. I've seen some of his stuff. I've seen like clips of him on Twitter, and I've seen him on Jubilee.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, he's apparently raised a lot more money than Crockett has. Although I think Crockett's probably more well known considering all the viral moments she's had in Congress. Do you have much of an opinion about who you'd rather win? I think I personally would just like to see a Democrat win, regardless of whether they're more populist or more traditional liberal, personally.
Yeah, I don't have strong opinions because I'd have to know more about the dynamics of the race. Like, who do I think is like significantly more likely to win, and then who? I'm familiar broadly with Tallarico's policies, but I don't know how. I don't know necessarily how far his ideas and stuff would get. I don't think most of them would get particularly far. Ultimately, I don't think either of them are bad enough that I would rather risk Republican winning. So probably just whichever one is more appealing. If there's not a significant, is that a competitive district? I don't know how competitive it is.
I mean, well, they're
The fact that it's
It's
in
in-
Texas kind of
Yeah, that's the thing.
intuitively
Yeah,
tells me
it's-
that if they push the envelope too far left, it's not going to end well for them.
And it's for the Senate, so it's I guess it's not restricted to districts.
Oh wait,
in
it's for the
this case.
Senate. I thought it was.
Yeah. They're both running for the
Oh
Senate.
shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was for a House seat. Oh,
Yeah, so big
that
stakes
will.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll. I don't know. Then it's difficult to say.
Might even be all for nothing.
It would.
Although I think that their likely Republican opponent is embroiled in some sort of scandal. I believe it's the either current or former Texas Attorney General who had some sort of big situation potentially hindering his campaign. Not that that'll do too much to stop him in Texas, but one can only hope if you're on the left, I suppose.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
guess it's what the Crockett person. How much how like center left are they? Are they like are they like very moderate? Or are they like relatively even if they're not like populist progressive type, are they at least like a semi open to progressive ideas person? Do you know?
My understanding is that they're more center left and more traditionally liberal than they are populist. James, does that comport with your understanding?
I'm not entirely sure, but I know that their messaging often appeals in a very, conflagratory, get eyes on way, in a way that originally suggested to me that they might be a little bit more progressive, but I couldn't tell you exactly. I haven't looked into it as much as well.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of her
It's hard.
performative politics, even though I imagine it alienates some huge amount of the center right base that was probably ungettable anyways, so I'm not that worried about it. But once you start bringing it, especially in a place like Texas, you're going to get all of those biases that just make running as a minority, a woman and a person of color just really difficult. And okay, so let's play devil's
Some things
advocate.
I'll just say some things are hard too, because although I lean more center left, a lot of the reason that is because I have like more maybe wonky is the right term idea on like what optimal tax policy looks like, and that
Like
that'll
wonk, you mean? Not wonky and like weird,
Yeah.
but policy wank sort of.
well. Both kind
Both?
of,
Okay.
like I think a lot of people would consider a DVCFT weird because
what
it is
that
yeah, exactly. It's a type destination based cash flow tax. It's a type of it's a tax that I kind of particularly like, and it's a weird idea in a sense that it's although there was a plan that Republicans had once to like introduce it, it didn't even like get to committee. They thought it was never going to pass or anything, so they didn't do it. It's not something that many people know about. It's a idea popular in the econ kind of wonk space that's not going to have political viability probably anywhere in the near future at the very least, as much as I might try. But the same principles that like will make me kind of not like the unrealized gains tax that a lot of the progressive people want to do, or the wealth taxes they want to do, the high corporate taxes. Also, leave me somewhat frustrated with the still suboptimal policy of a lot of the center left people. It's like,
yeah, because they're not going to give you an answer to all of our problems, and so we're just going to continue having this war between the populist left and right because the center can't quite come together to make a cohesive enough that it solves enough of our problems for people to not feel like they maybe desperately need those populist promises of
well, I'm not even sure the issue is like I don't think even like the more moderate like centrist anarcho people like know about or would support many of the more kind of wonky ideas I have, like the destination based cash flow tax or even just the progressive consumption tax. A lot of them are still broadly in favor of things that I find suboptimal. Even like when it comes to healthcare, a lot of them, almost all of them, support like pharmaceutical price negotiations, which I think is probably bad. Stuff like that still will leave me frustrated with how silly some of the things that we're going to be stuck with are.
All right, so I'm gonna try and devil's advocate just a little and and we'll test maybe where your limits are a little bit. So you originally started as, or you got activated in the Bernie era. Were you supportive of his concepts and economics generally at the time?
Yeah,
And then
yeah, I was in
in
Bernie Bro.
retrospect, are you much more critical of that? Like, was $15 a minimum wage too big of a promise in 2016? Because that's actually what made me break with the Bernie thing, where I was like, that sounds lovely. It's great to tell everybody that, but like in reality, unless you really fine tune that to mean something it's not, you're not going to get a $15 minimum wage in Nebraska and whatnot. It's just not. That's
Right.
gonna rip small businesses, restaurants, etc. apart.
Yeah, it would depend a bit on how much I'm considering like the politics of it versus the just the policy itself. $15 minimum wage in 2016, I don't think would have been like the end of the world. I think the U.S. economy would have gone on, mostly fine, but it probably would have been net bad, on the national level.
It could have been
My criticism that would
cataclysmic
be,
to small businesses, and then I feel like people would
yeah,
hear
we don't need
about how that.
those.
We don't need though. Is that a real
It's
economic opinion
called
coming from you?
It's called creative destruction.
Cre-
I think we
You're gonna
need
be
I think we
creating
need
a
small
lot
business.
with all that destruction. That's a
Exactly. Let's go.
gonna create a
I
whole
think we
new
need
system out of that destruction.
I think we need small businesses. I think like, well, part of the populist messaging is like relating to or like is appealing to small businesses, and sometimes it isn't even like popular stuff. It's just people like have a general intuition that like small businesses are good and the big evil corporations are evil and bad. And I don't really like that view. I think oftentimes the reason big corporations are very big is because they are efficient at what they do. There's a reason Walmart outcompetes local small businesses or whatever. It's because usually Walmart, for whatever issues you have with them, are able to offer at the end of the day a better deal to consumers because they experience gains from economies of scale, because they maybe are maybe just some nefarious deals that they strike. People have that opinion at least. It's probably with Pepsi. I think there might be some evidence of that, but.
Well, what do you think about the business practice that places like Walmart and Amazon have done, where they have had artificially low costs over a long period of time until they wrung out the competition from being able to exist, and then once they become they have an undue and or maybe not undue, but a burdenous position now as something of a monopoly. Like Amazon, as
Yeah, I'm
now
just
that
not
it's
really sure how much that happens. I think there's like specific instances where like there might be some, there probably is some behavior that's bad. So like with Walmart, I mentioned Pepsi. I think it does seem to be true that Walmart has slash had. I don't know for sure if they still have it because there was a lawsuit about it, but it got dismissed under Trump. A certain deal with Pepsi where like Pepsi would kind of get or have artificially low prices within Walmart, but a lot of times these companies have lower prices not because they're doing any nefarious practice, but just because they are pretty efficient and will benefit from economies of scale. And I haven't seen much evidence of them like jacking up prices after the mom and pop shop closes. It seems like usually they keep prices at the same level, and continue to offer consumers a better deal. Ultimately, although you could say maybe Walmart would just engage in competitive pricing again, if Walmart was charging significantly more than their cost, then someone else would probably start a grocery store that would start outcompeting with Walmart. And now maybe if Walmart truly was doing a large amount of predatory pricing, they would just start doing the predatory pricing again. But I don't know. I don't think it would happen that often. I haven't seen evidence of it at the very least. Oh, and I think with Amazon, there's been some allegations. I don't know for sure how true these are. That like Amazon has intentionally used the like Amazon Basics. I don't know if Amazon Basics. I don't know what to call it. It's not a company, obviously, but it's their brand of
generic
sort of
goods.
basic materials.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have used those to intentionally like undercut people and essentially be the only seller on Amazon selling some of those things, or at least, that's clearly the best deal. I think there's some evidence of that, but I think the scope of it is relatively narrow compared to what many people allege.
And you think perhaps even if that is a problem, then we don't deal with it by preventing that growth that could be good in the first place, and then maybe try and solve those on the back end if possible through other means.
Yeah, I mean, it was just I don't necessarily know the optimal way to deal with it, but some type of antitrust regulation is probably better than some type of sort of pre-crime cannot be the right word, but
Send the pre-cogs for Bill Gates.
Exactly. Then regulation that prevents the scale from happening in the first place, essentially. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do you think about the general landscape of how big business and big interests have been treated over, say, the last 80 years? There's a certain amount of regulation that many people believe is important in preventing the sort of financial disasters that have been cropping up. But at the same time, it sounds like you also want to leave us a good amount of room open for businesses to develop and flourish. Where do you think
Yeah.
that line lies?
Well, I do think the financial sector is kind of, in my opinion, more important to regulate and have some type of interventions for, because the credit market is very important to the rest of the economy, right? Like, at the end of the day, if Walmart went bankrupt, it'd be bad, but eventually most of the people who work for Walmart would find about a good job still. There would be pretty swift recovery from that. The CEOs would probably make out, the managers probably make out perfectly fine, make it out. Be funny if they made out though. And then
I'd be into it.
Some of the Walmart stores would be sold to other businesses. If the credit market fails, right, there is no, I think this is a Bernanke quote, there is no sustained economic recovery while there's a financial crisis, right? So having some types of regulation and interventions at a credit market and financial market is going to be more important generally than other markets, in my opinion. And also because there's probably just more sort of noise and or like irrational or overly risky trades that happen there. But, I think there's obviously going to be room for antitrust legislation. It's not going to be, I don't like that currently it seems like because Trump has a pretty crazy level of corruptness, it seems like, people who have antitrust suits against them can probably, get them dismissed based on like if they buy enough of Trump's crypto coin or whatever.
Yep.
I do think leaner con though, and like the Biden policy was probably too far in the antitrust respect, not allowing airlines to merge, even though that would probably enhance competition in the airline industry overall, because letting small airlines merge would let them probably better compete against the big airlines, right? That stuff is, in my opinion, bad. I think Lena Khan's antitrust framework a lot of times was just the wrong way to view things, but it's I don't know if the optimal policy is necessarily what we had during like Obama's time or before we saw the sort of big swings that we see now between the Lena Khan FCC and the I don't know who the FCC commissioner is right now, but Trump's FCC. I think that the important things are that concentration alone, in my opinion, is not ever going to be sufficient to show that a market is not competitive or not working well for consumers, and that markups alone are not going to be sufficient to show that either. There has to be some further readings into that data when we have it.
I got another question. Just a general economics question. One critique that I've felt of the system as it stands, the way capitalism tends over time to, it's like coming into a game of Monopoly that people have been playing for hundreds of years at this point. What do you think about the problem where, as capital and money and power gets accumulated into certain areas, that they become able to grab more and more sectors of our economy and financially just gain from that without really producing anything else? not giving value through their financialization of their existing wealth.
Yeah, I mean, I think the scale at which that happens is also greatly exaggerated. So
Well, what about
when it comes
90% of
to,
wealth or whatever being in the hands of 10% of people, whatever those statistics we've all heard a thousand times? Are those
yeah, I
those
mean, so I think that's
abuses of
exaggerated. So
numbers or
yeah, basically, there's a few different things that we're talking about here. So one, you can look at wealth and income inequality. I do think the scale of those things are often exaggerated. Typically, what people for like the crazy headline numbers, like some of those things you just said, either they're citing some like weird EPI thing, which is not like a published statistic or anything, or like paper or anything. They're just citing some kind of slop stuff on the internet. At best, they're citing, and a lot of people do cite this, the work of Piketty, Saez, and Zuckman, who are, to be fair, actual economists. They write actual papers about wealth and income inequality. I think typically when people cite those works, those numbers are exaggerated because it depends on what exact number you're talking about and what exact paper you use, because they have a lot of them. But like they'll do things like, for example, not counting a lot of benefits that the bottom 20-40% of the population gets, like Medicaid benefits and food stamps benefits, right? But then they will count unrealized gains of the top 1% as income. It's very weird, counting the unrealized gains of the rich, but not counting the realized benefits of the poor. I think inflates that number. There are a number of other weird things they do, like counting health insurance premiums as a tax that people pay, which might be more defendable, but still a little. That's not conventional. If you look at, there's economists who have like done work for the CBO, Congressional Budget Office and stuff. David Splinter and Gerald Auten, like they have papers on income inequality, and they show, hey, it actually seems like income inequality just has not gone up that much once you account for a lot of these benefits that Piketty, Saez, and Zuckman don't. There's other assumptions that differ too that I think are more reasonable to differ on, like how evenly distributed sort of unreported income is, or like income that the IRS can't necessarily keep track of. David Splinter assumes that is relatively evenly distributed, and he's written, I think, 2 papers to essentially back that assumption up. And Piketty, Saez, Zuckman assume that it is not particularly evenly split, and I don't know exactly what their evidence for that claim is, but it's certainly intuitively that would seem to be the case. When it comes to wealth inequality, Piketty, Saez, Zuckman have papers on that too. I think they make a lot of similar mistakes, and importantly, once you include Social Security in wealth inequality, then it has only gone up like 1 percentage point since, I think, 1.3 percentage points since like the 1960s, because Social Security that's a big fund of treasury bills that every American like has some future claim on, right? Essentially, every American has a future claim on the labor market earnings of the next generation. Ordinarily, that would be counted as kind of wealth, but because it's a pay-go system, we don't traditionally count it as wealth. But once you do include it as wealth, then it is, wealth inequality has not gone up that much. In fairness, it's obviously, poor people can't really utilize the wealth held in Social Security the same way rich people can utilize their wealth held in, whatever assets they have. But I think those things are exaggerated. The scale, or the amount to which like companies have consolidated, and or like there's just been increasing concentration in the economy, I think that's also exaggerated. It depends on what measure you're using. There's a number of different ways to try to measure it. But like, we have the HAI index, and then there's one called the, I forget what it stands for, CR, and then the number of firms you're looking at, it'll look at like the 50. So if CR50 would be looking at like the largest 50 firms, like what percent of the market do they control. That number like has gone up slightly. But that's not a particularly meaningful number, just looking at the entire national economy, because the regional differences are going to matter for a lot of the effects we care about, like how much a markup's gone up, which is also very complicated to measure how much markups have gone up across the economy, but the answer is probably not that much. And then we have to talk about what is this being driven by. So, is the rise in markups attributable to companies being able to charge consumers more because they have more market power, or is it attributable to just that, you know, there's been a shift from or more of the economy nowadays is dedicated towards high markup firms as opposed to lower markup firms. Like maybe manufacturing companies have relatively low markups. They probably did have low markups, but nowadays a lot of these service sector firms have higher markups, and we've just seen a reallocation. That's not necessarily meaning consumers are getting like particularly screwed or anything. And unfortunately, on that note, with the manufacturing going down, imports also matter, and imports are typically not included in those measures of concentration or anything. Maybe we're observing an increase in concentration because consumers are able to buy imports cheaper from other countries, and there's just less of that market domestically. So all the things I think are greatly exaggerated and don't necessarily. There has to be a lot more analysis before you realize, or to estimate sort of how bad the effects are, or what it's being driven by and stuff.
Well, I can see that we've got somebody in our waiting room looking to jump into the call. By the way, if you are listening and you want to jump into the call, hit up our Discord and jump into where it says the waiting room underneath the live show, and we will call on you as well. But for now, we've got Black Widow coming onto the show. Black Widow, you are on the air. Repeat caller. I remember you from a couple episodes ago. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, got some background noise.
Yeah.
Sounds like Black. Can you hear us, Black Widow? Sounds like you're listening to the stream.
Hello?
Oh, hey,
Hello.
Hey there, you
What's
got
up?
some background
Hi.
noise. Can you get the background noise down a little bit?
Oh yeah, we can get the background noise
Excellent.
down a little bit. Can you turn that down? It's not.
Well, it's good to hear from you again. How are you
Welcome,
doing
Black.
tonight, Black Widow?
Hold on.
Okay, no worries.
Getting
Take your time.
arranged here. The YouTube is not syncing with our.
Well, I mean, you're on the line, so would you like to just talk to us? How you doing? What'd you like to talk about?
Well, I'm trying to gather my bearings.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second.
You betcha.
Sure, very well. We're very patient here in the marketplace of ideas. We're not trying to put anybody on the spot. If anything, it should be evident that I can't speak for Nonfon, but James and I are certainly unqualified to be talking about any of these issues. So don't feel any pressure.
Well, I kind of feel like we're skipping all over the board, and we're
Okay.
not really focused on an issue.
Well, what would you like to talk about?
Well, I mean,
Now, if you're going to accuse us of being unfocused and then you come in without an issue to talk about, I think that that invites an accusation of
Ooh.
hypocrisy, if I'm going to be honest.
Bro.
I'm just kidding.
Is there anything you'd like to ask Nonfon?
well, non-fun. Seems like he was talking about financing a lot.
Correct.
I
I mean, I would
Yes,
say I
yeah,
talked a little
yeah,
bit about
that-
finance.
That did happen.
Financing is a
Finance
verb.
was-
I
yeah.
wasn't talking about that.
But either way, fiduciary issues were indeed discussed.
yeah.
You need some
And
money?
it seems like
Is
there's
that
a
what
lot
this is
going
about?
on today. What I mean, non-fun. What do you feel like is going on in Mexico today?
I'm not. I don't know. What is there something I missed going on in Mexico?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know what Black Widow's referring to, but there was a recent
A Chipotle
killing of a
burned down.
cartel. James,
What?
you're off the show. There was a cartel leader who was killed, and Puerto Vallarta is under siege. There's a bunch of U.S. tourists there who cannot leave because of the
Ooh.
situation. Things are indeed getting pretty nuts in Mexico.
Man.
That wasn't our planned topic for the day, but did you have anything to inform us about there, Black Widow?
I don't. I just wondered what y'all thought about it. I mean, it's crazy.
It's
How can
it's
it
not.
be a planned
Sounds bad.
topic?
Yeah, not good. Thumbs down. Well, actually, I'll take that back. Cartel leader dead. Thumbs up. City under siege. Thumbs down. Not good. Bad. People should be able to
but
go home.
it couldn't have been a planned
Close up,
topic.
yeah.
It happened spontaneously. None of us were expecting it.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Now
happened
we have-
spontaneously
Especially
several
that
days
guy.
ago. We
He
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
didn't see it coming.
if he did, he didn't seem to do much about it, or at least it didn't work.
Maybe he
'cause-
Obi-Wan and he's going to become blue glowy drug dealer guy.
I think that cartel members are exempt from being one with the Force, though. I don't think that you can do that if you illegally traffic drugs around the world and make lots of money doing it. That's more of a Sith
Han
thing. and
Solo
they're
was
not-
or I don't think Han Solo the Force at all, but he had
He was
he
a
was a drug
smuggler.
smuggler, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's J.J. Abrams, and J.J. Abrams has no respect for the lore of Star Wars, as evident by the movies that he made within that franchise.
He was literally Han Solo was he was trading spice or whatever in the first movie, wasn't he? In the episode
He
4.
was indeed a spice trader, and yet at the end of episode 8, he ended up with his very undeserved force. Oh, 9, episode 9. That's what you get for talking about the sequels. But you didn't bring up the sequels. You brought up Mexico. Well, yeah. We have our reactions. Mix of good and bad, depending on the particular granular details you're discussing. Have you read anything about it today? Has there been any new updates?
Yeah. Are you on the
Well,
scene?
there's a lot of Americans stuck there, and they're stuck in their hotel rooms with no food, no water. They can't leave. I watched some videos where I guess the cartel members are pulling into gas stations, pulling out the pumps and spraying gas all over the place, and then lighting them on fire.
Just destruction. So things
That
really
sounds-
breaking down. That's
Yeah, that sounds pretty chaotic.
luckily we have a president that is really intelligent and will know how to help assist our neighbor from devolving into chaos and destruction. I'm sure he's got a plan on how to
Did
invade
Obama come
Mexico.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I
that
was
would
gonna
be
say the
cool.
U.S. has threatened to send the military into Mexico a couple of times. It seems like.
Yeah.
I wonder if they were just trying to beat us to the punch so that we couldn't keep leaning on that excuse for invading their country. As like, oh, it's the cartel. Oh, you killed the cartel leaders. Oh, we'll have to think of something else. Have you got any oil by chance? Well,
They
we'll
don't
have
tell.
to. We'll
That's
have
what
to
the
think of
cartels,
another
they're
good
making
excuse.
sure to get rid of their oil in their gas stations because
Yeah, maybe that's
Trump will
that's
come
what it
for
is.
every penny. Okay,
That's what it is. That's why they're getting rid of all the fossil fuels, because then we'll have nothing to
Yep,
invade the
nothing
country
to invade
for.
for. All right, perfect.
Well, Black Widow, have you got anything else for us?
I'm sorry, I don't. You can get back to your.
That's all right.
You were
We
fun
appreciate
anyways.
you calling
Thank you
in.
so much.
Yeah, thanks for
well,
being a good sport with us.
Nonfon, how
Am I
much?
going to get some grift coin?
Yeah,
I figured that's what it was really about. You
that's
just
what
wanted
this
some
was
free
about.
fake
You had
money.
nothing. You had nothing interesting, and you just wanted the payment. No, that
All right.
that is an
James.
interesting subject. It's just we weren't prepared
James
to talk about it.
Vagabond.
I'm sorry. It's not that it's not
Are
interesting.
you
it's just we
saying that
weren't
I had
ready.
nothing interesting to say?
sorry.
Are you saying that I'm over 60 and I can't think for myself?
I don't think it has anything to do
That's
with you
exactly
being over
what I
60.
said. Non-fun. How much would you like to award this lady?
I'll give her. She gets 3 coins. That's
300, 3 or 300?
3.
Just 3.
3. I thought. Didn't you say? You said like 1,500 was the most,
We've
right?
been
So-
running with a minimum of 500.
No, well, that's not the minimum. No, we gave one poor soul 250 and 150 for the first two, or like
Thanks a lot,
500 and
Non-Fon.
250.
All right, we'll give you
I'll
300.
give her 503 then. Okay.
503. Okay, you have Nonfon to thank for that extra fake scratch, because we were just gonna short you with a pittance.
But we
But
really do
either way-
appreciate you calling in again. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you so much, Black
But
Widow.
if there's anyone else that wants to come in,
All right, Black Widow. We'll see you next time. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
thank you.
Good night.
As the marketplace of ideas,
Let's
anything
go.
can happen here. That's yeah, crazy things happening in Mexico. If only we knew more about. Oh, Black Widow's jumped back into the waiting room. I don't think she's quite. She did say she's over 60, so I think we can cut her a little bit of slack when it
Yep.
comes to navigating Discord. That's really more of a young person's. If I could be so generous to myself and James and call ourselves young people.
Oh God, not
Relatively.
as much anymore. How are
No,
you on
not
the
so
age
much.
front, Non-Fon? Are you feeling old yet? Jesus,
The big
I wanna say I'm
2-0.
feeling old now.
we are.
But-
I'm feeling old.
Are you- Are your bones?
I mean, I
creaking
think
yet?
there's. No, not quite. You know, I think there's a little bit of a fall off in the number of like compliments you get as like, oh, you're so smart for your age once you hit 20, once you're not in the teens anymore. But that's it. That's the only thing I've noticed. I think maybe it's gotten dumber. That's possible.
I don't know about that. I mean, I will say also, with the emergence of some younger streamers, maybe it's changing a little bit. But also getting into the streaming space at a younger age probably get you a little more clout for your political knowledge, wouldn't it?
Somewhat, probably.
Somewhat, yeah. All right. Well, either way, yeah. So as we've mentioned, the waiting room is open for anybody else who'd like to call in. The topics we're discussing today are the tariffs. We're discussing democratic messaging. We're discussing all the implied issues therein. Of course, we're also down to talk about anything you'd like to bring up, such as Mexico. Anyway, with that caller gone and with no callers left on the docket, I'll leave it to you, gentlemen, to get back to what you were originally discussing.
Where were we at?
We were at, like some stuff with she was right. We did kind of jump around a lot.
We gotta kind of out there.
Well, such as the nature of all
because
these issues being interrelated, it's kind of easy to hop from one to the other.
Well, I think it's more of a. It's gonna sound mean. I'm not trying to be mean. It's more of a. It's frustrating when like the ideas are so or like the memes kind of. I call them memes are so broad. The populist thought memes are so broad about things like wealth inequality and like concentration of companies and stuff. You know, when people just say like, oh, don't you think like everything's getting like more expensive and everything's getting worse and everything's getting more unequal or whatever. It's frustrating when the idea is so broad and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but like you know, I know more about like the
knowledge yourself of the ins and outs.
Right. It's like I know more about like analyzing like the specifics of it. So it's like we take a question of like, is everything getting more like unequal or whatever? Then it's like, okay, well, do you mean wealth inequality or income inequality?
Rich people a little bit? Should we?
Here, I mean, I don't like that. I don't like that rich people don't donate more than money to charity. Like, I think people go way too far, in my opinion, with like, oh, the billionaires are all like immoral or whatever. Like, you can't be a moral billionaire. Usually, I don't agree in the sense that they're saying that because they're talking about like exploitation and stuff. I agree in the sense that I think if you're a billionaire, you should donate all your money to effective charities, and you're somewhat evil for not doing so. But in fairness, I do also think that regular people in America should donate more of their money to the charity, and most of them fail to do so as well. But billionaires would still live a very good life if they lived on $100 million instead of $1 billion. So they have more blame in that sense, and they would also save a lot more people.
It seems easy from my perspective, not having nearly that much money, but who knows? Maybe once you get to that point, you realize all these hidden costs that start popping up when you have to like keep your yachts maintained and things like that. I'm sure it's tough.
You sell the yacht. You got to sell the yacht and give it to.
Sell the yacht. How are you going to yacht in this economy? What are you going to show up to the beach party in a canoe? Come on.
You can get a small boat.
Well, I mean, listen. As someone with no boat, I'll take a small boat, but I can understand being frustrated by downgrading. Nonfon.
Yeah, they could at the very least just commit to giving it like all away on their death. I think that's good. So
some sort of post-mortem agreement there. Nonfon.
Some of them, like Bill Gates has done that. So
has he? Okay, maybe that'll make up for any revelations that'll be coming out about him in the near future. Really appreciate your time today, Nonfon. Did you have a hard out, or do you want to hang out for a bit longer?
I don't have a hard out or anything. So we can, if there's someone you want to go over, I can hang out. But I do have there is another conversation I want to get to eventually with someone. So
sure, yeah. Well, if you've got other obligations, we don't want to take advantage of your time, but we do absolutely appreciate hanging out with us. And I just want to mention again to anybody who's listening, hit up our Discord and maybe jump over to our YouTube channel, give us a like and subscribe before you head back to Nonfon stream. We really appreciate any of that you can give us, so we're glad to have you with us here.
Yes, even though we've got tons of tech failures, we have at least the charisma that we've been reaching out to some very very interesting people and having great conversations with them. Like we said, we've got counterpoints on regularly. We had Dylan Burns on twice now, or at least he called in for an hour on, and we've got Ryan Mullally later. So definitely please subscribe and stay tuned. We're gonna keep working on things.
What are you going to talk to Ryan
Actually-
about?
What did we have on the docket for that one again, Kyle?
We were going to chat with him a little bit about natural law. We'd also planned on talking with him about the First Amendment as it pertains to things like the Tallarico getting censored off of Colbert, that situation. With
It'll
him
be
being a few
spicier
weeks,
than economics, but
maybe a little
still
bit.
respectful.
That said, I mean, who knows what could develop in the next couple of weeks? We might find something new to discuss. What with all the upcoming developments.
Yeah. And
I think you'll find areas of disagreement with his. I don't know what your views on natural law are, but on any of the current event stuff, you're probably going to disagree with quite a bit of stuff. I imagine
it'll be a little bit less of a liberal circle jerk with Ryan, I would imagine. We kind of sometimes it's easy to fall into that with you and with Dylan. We also it turned into a just kind of bouncing similar opinions back and forth. Not a lot of contention, which makes for maybe a little bit less of an inviting call-in situation. That's one of the things that I've noticed with whenever we have a more liberal guest, someone who's similar to our own views, it seems to be less inviting for call-ins. But
yeah.
But such as what
I'll give. I don't have unlimited time, okay? But here's my if there are people, my most anti-liberal hot takes, okay?
Okay.
Well, taxes are bad. Okay, pharmaceutical price negotiations is bad. So is single payer healthcare. Worker co-ops are semi bad. I don't think we should ban them or anything, but I don't think we should encourage them really. I'm trying to think of more anti-liberal takes. Income tax is bad, but acceptable given where we are. Yeah, I can't think of anything else.
No, that's good. We appreciate you rattling off a couple hot takes there for us. Hopefully somebody listening is going to bite on those. I was kind of wondering if North would jump in. I know that you like to stream with North from time to time, don't you?
Yeah. He's a famed Nonfon orbiter, of course.
Of course.
Oh, you know what? This here's another. This partially reminded me of it. This is kind of a anti-liberal take, but I don't really think it is. I would save 5 zygotes in a burning hospital rather than one baby. Okay. Not because I think zygotes have any intrinsic moral worth, but just because I think generally future sentience also matters, and 5 future people, assuming they're going to live good lives, are probably going to be more important than saving one currently existing person. I don't think the fact that the person is currently existing grants them infinite right to be prioritized over future people. Certainly, I would think most people would grant it'd be better to save, assuming they were going to be happy and everything, 1 million future people who will live great lives rather than one currently existing person. And I think that scales down. I don't know exactly where I draw the line, but certainly 5 is probably worth it.
Oh yeah, that reminds me of your shrimp hypothetical. I haven't heard it. I've only heard it through Chipingro, but why don't you run us through it?
I got my shrimp welfare. It's not a hypothetical, but it's a real.
It's not hypothetical.
Existing...
Absolutely, there are real shrimp today in danger of suffering. And
yeah, exactly.
And I haven't figured out yet to what degree you're being truly empathetic to the suffering of animals and how much you're memeing. And I don't know if I want the answer.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing that makes the Shrimp Welfare Project good is that not only is it genuinely, in my opinion, a highly effective charity that actually does really good things, and that I actually donate a lot of money to, and I have raised $600 for through my subathons. But it's also something that is funny to meme about because it's a silly idea. I got my shrimp costume behind me. I got my shrimp welfare merch on. It sounds very funny, but for those who don't know, the 1 minute pitch essentially is that roughly like 400 to 700 billion farm shrimp are killed every year. They typically live in pretty bad conditions on the farm, and when they are killed, they are usually killed in what's called like ice slurries, where they will essentially be buried alive under layers of ice and be left to suffocate and or freeze to death over the course of 20 minutes. Probably a pretty painful, stressful way for them to die. The Shrimp Welfare Project offers these stunning machines that essentially presumably painlessly stun the shrimp before they are put in this ice slurry, so they're killed immediately and probably painlessly before they experience that. And they work to improve some of the conditions on the farm. So, for example, they also make sure farms don't do what's called eye stalk ablation, where female shrimp will have their eyes crushed or removed while they're alive, which makes them like artificially more fertile. And that obviously is probably pretty painful, stressful for the female shrimp, but probably has negative effects on their children as well, it seems like. So, I know what everyone's thinking. I don't give a fuck about shrimp. Okay. The best evidence we have suggests that shrimp, probably do suffer to some degree, to a non-trivial sense. So we observe in not necessarily the shrimp we eat, but decapods that are similar, things that we colloquially call shrimp, although shrimp is not like a scientific term. They will do things like respond to painkillers. They typically will like rub their wounds, but if we give them painkillers, they don't do the same thing. If we, they have the ability to make some trade-off between some amount of risk and reward or whatever, some amount of pain for a reward, whether it be food or like a more entertaining environment that they have in their little tanks. And essentially all the evidence we have points to them having some non-trivial degree of like ability to suffer and stuff. And most of the stuff that we don't have evidence on, it's, we don't have evidence on it rather than like we did the experiment and it turned out shrimp didn't exhibit this behavior. It's just that we haven't like really done it yet. Certainly your credence that shrimp suffer should be, above like 60%. And the nice thing about the Shrimp Welfare Project is that, because of the scale of shrimp farming, it is very, very efficient. So a single dollar will save about 1,400 shrimp from experiencing a painful death per year over roughly the next 10 years. Stunning machines only last so long or whatever, but in expectation, the sort of median marginal dollar right now will save about 14,000 shrimp. And there's a think tank called, or think tank might not be the right word, but organization called Rethink Priorities. They try to do their best estimates based on the data we have about how much animals suffer relative to each other and like relative to humans. Don't take this as like gospel or anything. This is not a precise science, but their median estimate is shrimp suffer like 3.1% as intensely as humans do. And their mean estimate is like 19% based on all the data, we have. So non-trivial degree of sentience there.
They suffer 19% as much on their
so
higher
the way to
end
be
estimate.
like the max that shrimp can conceivably suffer is like 19% as intense in sort of the moment as like a human could. Obviously there's other like concerns we would have as humans, like mental anguish. Shrimp are not going to get PTSD in the same way a human would if you tortured a human, but just the maximum intensity of pain is the mean estimate is 19% for shrimp compared to the maximum intensity a human could experience.
And so the logic would be that
short.
if you harm a shrimp who's at 3% or maybe even 19% as capable of suffering, then the suffering of 33 or even 5 shrimp would equal 1 human suffering. And so if you care about human suffering,
kind of.
then you should care about the shrimp suffering to a somewhat similar degree. Is that sort of the argument that comes out of this?
Somewhat. I essentially agree with that argument. I think that's a more controversial claim than you have to make to agree with shrimp welfare. Now, maybe, shrimp suffering just for whatever reason, like doesn't matter as much as human suffering, even if the sort of units are equivalent, right? But the important thing is, the baseline argument is just simply like, it is good to prevent lots of suffering at very low cost. And the Shrimp Welfare Project,
does that.
Does that. And that doesn't really rely on, the exact claim of, how much suffering exactly it prevents, whether it is 3.1% or 19% or 1% or whatever. Because of the scale of it, regardless of what estimate you use, it's going to be a pretty effective charity. And then maybe shrimp suffering doesn't matter as much as human suffering, so you should discount it. Like, even if it's the same amount of pain, if it's in a shrimp, it's like not as bad as it is if it's in a human. Discounting again all the long run issues with human mental stuff that shrimp probably you're not going to have. But even if you apply a discount to that as well, it's still going to be a pretty good charity that prevents quite a bit of quite a lot of suffering. That's very good to donate to.
Yeah, it's an efficient use of money to solve the problem. And I gotta say also, I just admire anybody who is going to have a utilitarian outlook and actually make a utility calculation, as opposed to just saying that they're a rules utilitarian and all of the rules exist so they don't have to make utility calculations. So I appreciate just the level of granular effort to crunch those numbers and figure out what you think the actual moral stance should be.
I mean, I do think for one, you don't have to be a utilitarian to agree with the Shrimp Welfare Project or anything. That's right. Like, me and Ryan Malay talked about that. I mean, ultimately, he just claimed that any animal suffering, like, just fundamentally doesn't matter at all. So that's his position. But
where do you think that intuition comes from, and where do you think your intuition that it does matter comes from?
I don't think he has the intuition that animal suffering doesn't matter at all.
He has the motivation.
I think if you showed him a video of someone kicking a puppy, or showed him, and obviously, like with anything, we're going to control for whether or not it's someone else's puppy that you're like harming, or whether it's going to cause some harm to humans, which it does matter, whatever. We're controlling for that. Like, if you showed him a video of someone kicking a puppy, or if he saw someone kicking a puppy, he would have the intuition that is wrong.
Yeah.
But he is discounting that intuition, which every philosophy is going to have some cases where there's going to be a unintuitive case that you discount for whatever other reasons. Certainly, utilitarian has those. And he's discounting that based on other intuitions about what common sense morality is, based on the natural law that we can, I forget his phrasing, but discover, that's written on our hearts and that we have to discover. Okay, we used to think, we might have thought, slavery was wrong, but because of the moral law written on our hearts, we eventually discover that actually slavery was indeed wrong. But, that's my understanding.
Well,
so maybe not full Descartes, considering that he doesn't think that animals are just automatons, but you think that he's got some other motivation for having that view.
I think and like I said, every philosophy is going to do this, but I think he's discounting that intuition based on other facts about that he believes with regards to where morality comes from and such.
Yeah.
But like, to be clear, like I'm going to do that too. Like, I'm trying to think of a example off the top of my head, but there are going to be cases where like utilitarianism is going to lead to, and it depends what type of utilitarianism you're talking about, obviously, but some type of reductio that you're going to discount based on like a more fundamental intuition. Like, most people don't have the intuition that you should push someone in front of a train to slow it down to stop 5 people from getting run over. But I think that intuition is easily discounted by the fact that, like, we've literally done experiments where, like, we will test a bunch of different people, we'll give them like blind quizzes, and they'll answer sort of like morally what should be identical cases with regards to like pushing someone in front of a train versus like pulling a lever to divert the train, right? And it seems like what drives their intuition a lot of time is just kind of the emotional feeling of like physically pushing someone rather than doing like the actual moral calculus there. And it seems like we have evidence as well that the more people reflect on things, the more people think about it, the more utilitarian they get with regards to those examples. And very funny example, people who have a certain type of brain damage that makes them less emotional, so they can't really like feel emotions anymore, but they still have like their reasoning skills tend to be a lot more utilitarian. So, you can view that different ways, okay? But I think that is a reason to discount some of the intuitions we have in certain cases. Every philosophy is going to do that, but yeah.
In other words, if you are a utilitarian, you might be brain damaged, is what I'm taking away from that statement.
Basically, yeah.
There you have it.
And
all right, yeah, I do have to. Yeah, that is exactly what you should take away. I do have to my soft out to go yell at someone else, but
Please.
I do appreciate coming on. I'll let you.
Yeah.
You should shout yourself out again in my audience. So.
Hey, thank
Yeah.
you all for listening in. Thanks, Nonfon, for coming on. We are the marketplace of ideas. We're working on a lot of interesting systems. We didn't even get into the actual market where you can invest your grift coin into ideologies, and then we're working on a lot of cool, interesting systems to try and build up the sort of something of a spiritual inheritor to maybe like Hippy Dippy podcasts where people come on, debate, and have a good time. And we're also trying to do that with ideally some better faith and maybe some more hands-on moderation so that things don't veer off into, 4-hour debates about the definition of fascism, etc. Kyle, anything you want to say?
Yeah, just thank you so much for checking us out. If you haven't yet, hit up our Discord, check out our YouTube, give us a like and subscribe there. We really appreciate you checking us out. We're working on, like James said, lots of gamified ways to interact with our space. We have gamified debates where you can interact with other members of the community that way. You can bid to call in and get a little bit ahead in the call-in list using our fake currency.
And we're always working on more.
Yes, indeed, we will. So, yeah, I just want to again say to Nonfon, thank you so much for jumping in last minute. We really appreciated the conversation, and we hope to hang out soon again at some point in the future if you're willing. Excellent.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I appreciate coming on.
Hey,
excellent,
neighbor.
Thanks, man. Have a good night.
You too. Yep. See you guys
anything
later.
you want to say before we go?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm Nonfon. I mean, you should see my social on screen. Stream on YouTube, Twitch, and Kick, and Twitter at Nonfon420. Or YouTube is just Nonfon. And on YouTube, you can also find a bunch of my old debates that I have with a bunch of different people about primarily economics, capitalism, and tariff stuff. And I'm gonna go yell at someone about tariffs. Hopefully, right after I hop off this.
I think I might watch that. Awesome. Alrighty.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Nonfon. Wonderful meeting you. Have a wonderful evening.
All right, you guys as well. I appreciate it.
Cheers, y'all.
All right.
Alrighty. Thanks for coming to the marketplace, everybody. I'm gonna